So a few days ago I made a review about the Sokani x60, which is a pretty compact but surprisingly powerful and high quality little Bowens mount LED light, and I'm using it right now as my rim light up there. But people have asked from watching that video and watching others a couple of questions. For example, what softbox would I recommend for it? Because the yoke on there is not quite as strong, and larger, heavier softboxes can easily make it droop down. So they're looking for smaller or lighter softboxes. And also people want to see how it looks in a key light sort of setup, because it actually does have a fairly powerful output, and they want to hear how it sounds with the light close to the microphone. So today we're going to take the light down from over there. We're going to put it into a key light position to see how it sounds, how the fan noise sounds with the microphone right here, right next to it. And we're also going to throw in a couple of soft boxes to see what works. I have the Aputure Light Dome Mini, which of course is a mini version of their light dome. This is the Mark II. And we're going to try out the Elinchrom Deep Octa 70, which I have here, which is a larger softbox, but these are really, really light. The Rotolux line from Elinchrom, really lightweight, especially in the front. They're not front heavy whatsoever. Most of the weight is at the mount, so I'm hoping that this will work well because there's not a lot of torque on that mount for the Sokani light. And I do have a Bowens mount on here. It comes of course with an Elinchrom mount, but you can get it in other mounts. So I have this with a Bowens mount as well because I've been using it a lot recently with Bowens mount lights. So let's get right into it. Alright, so now I've put the Sokani up here with the Aputure Light Dome Mini Mark II, and it's just over arm's length away from me, so I could probably bring this in even a little bit closer, but this is kind of more or less where the surface for my Aputure Light Dome was before, with the Aputure 120D Mark II, which is my main key light that I was using before. And this is on 1% right now, just so you know. It's on 1% brightness, and it was on 1% back there as well. But let's go ahead and use the remote that comes with it and pump up the output. Okay, sorry, that was kind of sudden. This is at 50% now, and it looks honestly a little bit brighter than what I was using with the Aputure 120D. Of course, this is a smaller modifier, so it's gonna kind of magnify the output a little bit more and push it out a little bit more, but it is smaller. But yeah, this is at 50%. Let's pump it up to 100 just so you can see. Alright, and so this is at 100%. And again, the thing to remember with the Light Dome Mini Mark II is that there's not a double diffusion in there. There's a silver reflector which bounces it back into the silver lining of the softbox, which then pumps it out. So that's why this pumps out quite a lot of brightness. And also the diffusion on the front here is not quite as thick as the diffusion that was on my larger light dome as my key light. But yeah, this is what you're getting. So let me move it just a little bit closer, and I'll try and dial in that exposure a little bit better as well. And we'll show you what it looks like and also how it's going to sound when it's a little bit closer than it is right now to the microphone. Alright, so now I'm just judging this visually, so if the exposure is still a little bit off, excuse me. And I also haven't adjusted the color, temperature, or anything on my camera, so if this is a little bit of a shift from the Aputure 120D Mark II, then I apologize. It shouldn't be too much of a shift. They're basically both daylight balanced lights, but this is now in arm's reach. It's just out of the frame. This is pretty much as close as I could get it without being in this frame, and this is what it looks like as my key light at 25%. And so now it's pretty close to the microphone. Of course it's off axis, but it's about, the light itself is probably about a meter or under a meter away from the microphone. So I'll give you a little bit of silence to hear how it sounds at this distance. Now keep in mind there's noise outside. I also do have a heater on downstairs, which you may or may not be able to hear. I don't think it's usually too much of a problem in my audio, but I will also put a short clip from just the Aputure 120D up there, which is a lot quieter, so that way you can have it as a comparison, kind of as a baseline, to see if this is going to be a problem for you. Also, this Light Dome Mini Mark II is just a little bit heavy, so you have to really, really tighten down that yoke to make sure that the light itself doesn't sag under the weight of the Light Dome Mark II, the Light Dome Mini Mark II. But it's at that kind of borderline area where it might be okay for a while if you really tighten it down, but you have to be careful about that because I'd be worried about how much that could hold up over time. However, this light only sags a certain amount before it stops because it bumps into its own yoke, and if you're using it in this type of position, then that kind of 45-degree angle actually works out okay, so it's not going to be that huge of a problem. But just be aware that with the weight of the Lightdome Mini Mark II, it does still sag a bit unless you're really heavy-handed on tightening that down. So now we're going to switch this out for the Elinchrom Deep Octa 70, and we'll see how it looks as a key light because that does have 2 layers of diffusion. It's larger, it's deeper, it's a bit of a different modifier, and we'll also see how well the light can handle the weight and the size of that. Alright, so now we've got the Deep Octa 70 on there, and I did have to back this up just a little bit because this is a deeper modifier than the Lightdome Mini, so to get this out of the frame, I had to back it up a little bit, but it is still pretty close, about an arm's length, and it's just out of the frame here. And just looking at the screen, I really like the way this looks. It does have a bit of a softer light to it because the diffusion is a little bit thicker, and there is a double layer diffusion in there instead of just that reflector that's inside of the Lightdome Mini. So it's a different look for sure, but one thing to note about this is there is no grid for this, so if you want to control your light spill, then the Lightdome Mini is going to be a lot better for that. It does come with a grid, and that works great. Also, this light is still at 25% even with this larger dual layer diffusion softbox on there, and it's in a totally acceptable position. It's not too far from me. And it's doing a great job of filling me in for a key right now. Again, I'll put my camera specs on screen, which I probably already have at this point, but if you want to see just for some idea of what I'm working with here, I think this is totally usable as a key light. And if you're not super duper picky about the noise, the fan noise, then it's going to do a great job for the price. Both of these are very easy to set up. They're very well made. They're durable. I've used these for years, and they've both stood up to the test of time for me over heavy use. They're both great modifiers, and just to note here, this does seem to be holding its position a bit better. So the Elinchrom modifier, the Elinchrom softbox, is a bit lighter, and it does seem to be, even though it's larger, a better fit in terms of weight for the Sokani x60. So I don't think it's going to change much. There's only a very slight difference in position from a few seconds ago, but I will give you a few seconds of silence again just to hear if at this distance there's any significant change in the noise that you're hearing on the microphone from the light itself. And once more, we'll give you a comparison with the noise from the Aputure 120D Mark II, which of course was back just a little bit further because I did have that larger original light dome on there, but you can hear how it sounds for comparison side by side with these other positions that I've had the Sokani light in. Between these two modifiers, if it were me and I were picking a key light and I didn't care about controlling the spill, I would go for the Elinchrom. It handles the weight better. It's a beautiful source of light, and it's just really well made. I've used it for photography and videography over the years, and it's really great. But if you do want something that's a little bit more compact, if you want something that is going to be easier to control the spill or something like that, I would go for the Lightdome Mini Mark II because it does have that grid option and it is more compact. They're both really great modifiers, but I think they're just going to be a little bit different in terms of appearance and how you're going to use them. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, as always, let me know down below, and do check out the review of the Sokani x60 if you're interested, as well as videos related to the Elinchrom softbox and the Lightdome Mini Mark II. I'll put links for all of that down in the video description, so if you missed the links on screen, you can go ahead and check it out right there. Anyway, if you liked this video or found it helpful, please do give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to see more in the future. And as always, thank you for watching.